Hello, good morning. Today I have a quite short presentation about a proposal of changes to the underlying ontologies that are used by TermIt, which is our terminology manager that we develop and support. It is based on SKOS, or partially it's based on SKOS, and that's I think the biggest problem. So we have some underlying ontologies that we use in TermIt. Two of them, the most important ones, are created by us, or were created by us, which is the ontology for data description, or data description ontology, and the TermIt ontology. But also part of the schema of TermIt, or the data model of TermIt, is compatible with SKOS, but it's not 100% compatible, or more precisely, we have some additional stuff on top of the SKOS data model, and there are some problems with compatibility with SKOS. So when we export SKOS version of a vocabulary, we need to do some transformation, and when we import SKOS vocabulary or SKOS concept schemes, we also need to do some transformations. The data model that I just described, and based on these ontologies, and I will show you how it looks like, or the part that is relevant to today's talk, is based on a conception of semantic vocabulary of terms, or methodology for semantic vocabulary of terms, which this version is from 2019, but actually the structure, the idea of the structure is even older. The problems with this data model are that it's Czech specific, which has been fine so far when our deployments were only in the Czech Republic. But if we want to internationalize TermIt, this could be a problem. It is also obsolete. It has been replaced, or will be replaced, by this open formal norm for vocabularies, which is being created by the Digital and Information Agency. It's still a draft, but as far as we know and have been informed by the people who work on this norm, it will not change, or not significantly. And the structure, which I will show you, it's quite complex and impractical, as we have found out in the deployments that we use at the moment. And as I said, it's not completely compatible with SKOS. The problems that we have with it is the incompatibility with SKOS, as I just said, internationalization of TermIt, because all of the IRIs of the schema are in Czech, which is, of course, which makes them opaque to non-Czech speakers. And also the IRRs themselves are often inconsistent. So, for example, terms from the TermIt ontology, the ontology itself, the base identifier of the ontology is in English, which is this part. So it's ontologies ontologies application TermIt. But the specific part is in Czech, so it's poem administrator TermIt, which is quite confusing, or can be quite confusing. The data description ontology doesn't have this problem, because the IRI of this ontology and its content is all in Czech, but it has the aforementioned problem of internationalization. So the schema, as I said, or as I described, and we view it as sort of obsolete and problematic, looks like this. This is just the relevant part of, obviously, the whole schema is much bigger, but the relevant part that we would like to change, or I propose to change, looks like this. So we have a vocabulary, which is from the data description ontology. Excuse me. And this vocabulary has references to a model and a glossary. And the glossary is a subclass of SKOS scheme or SKOS concept scheme. So here is the integration with SKOS. And the glossary contains terms, which originally they were terms. There was a class, or there is a class in the data description ontology, which is called term. But we have replaced it basically with SKOS concept. So we are mixing our ontologies and SKOS, and then there is this. So there is a relationship, or SKOS-based relationship between the glossary and the concepts. But there is also this inferred relationships between the concept and the vocabulary, because we need it for the application to work better, because we don't always want to travel these two relationships just to get to the terms from the vocabulary. So this is quite complex. The original idea was that the glossary would contain the glossary, just the terms and hierarchy between them, and the model would contain the ontological or the conceptual model of the vocabulary. So it would contain the more complex relationships created by some ontology expert. The fact is that we don't use the model at all. If we create an ontological model of the particular vocabulary, the data are mixed together, and there is no reference to this model at all. So its existence is basically useless. We don't use it anywhere. The modeling tools don't use it anywhere. It's just an artifact of the original idea of how a vocabulary should be structured, that it should have a glossary and it should have a model. The changes that we propose, or I propose, are that we ditch the whole vocabulary glossary model structure and we just go full SKOS. So we will just have a SKOS concept scheme, which will be our vocabulary, and SKOS concepts, which represent the terms which we already use. Yep. And there will be just this relationship between the concept scheme and the concepts. So basically really just plain SKOS. And also it will be obviously compatible with SKOS. So export and import should be much simpler. And also the parts that are not only in SKOS, but which are additional, we would translate these ontologies to English. So I mean, and I don't mean just the labels, because we already have labels translated to English and German actually, but the identifiers. So we would change the identifiers of the ontologies from ontofel with CZ. I can actually probably show you an example later, to English. Yep. The approach that I have been testing a little bit just on the data, I haven't done any changes in TermIt itself, would go basically like this. So we would execute a bunch of queries that would simplify the schema. So we would get rid of the vocabulary, model, glossary structure. So we would basically make vocabulary a SKOS concept scheme, remove the glossary and model, link the terms directly to the vocabulary, and yeah, remove the glossary model and all the references to them. This I have tried. It seems to work. It reduces the repository size, obviously. I haven't tested it with TermIt because it requires changes to the TermIt source code as well. So I haven't done that yet. The second phase would be executing SPARQL queries to migrate IRIs. That's actually quite simple. Just replace the IRIs in subject or object position, and predicate object, basically in all positions of the triples, you just replace the IRIs. So that's actually quite simple. There's just a lot of them. but this can be automated quite easily. And the last step, because we use inference rules in GraphDB to infer some of the information used by TermIt, we would need to update these rule sets, because the rule sets expect, excuse me, because these rule sets are based on the check identifiers that we will be replacing. So we need to update the rule sets as well. So currently we have 17 rules, and 6 of those would be affected. There are 2 options. With GraphDB, we can either just update the rule sets by adding new rules that will replace the old ones, and leave it as it is, because the old rules would just not trigger anymore, because there aren't any data that would trigger them, or there wouldn't be any data that would trigger them. The other option, obviously, is export the data, drop the repository, recreate the repository with the new rule set, and import the data again. So this more or less depends on whether we control the deployment or not. If we control the deployment, it makes sense to replace the rule set. If we don't, and we just want to provide the users with an automated update path, we can do it by just adding the new rules and leaving the old ones in the repository and not changing them. So good news is that this whole stuff can be automated. Actually, we have a tool which can be used to migrate ontological schemas. It was a bachelor thesis of a student of mine. She finished it this semester, so we can use that. I have actually tested it as part of evaluation of the thesis. So I tested a partial migration of the identifiers from Czech to English, and it works reliably and it looks good. So I believe we can use it for to automate the whole migration, both the schema simplification and the translation of the identifiers. And since GraphDB supports adding new rules to a rule set using Sparkle, we could also use it for adding the new rules that we need to replace. So I believe this can be done fully automated for deployments that are not under our control. However, there are some questions or notes that we need to take into consideration. One of them is that we would need to update ontographer, because ontographer also relies on this old structure of vocabulary, glossary, and model, or more specifically on the relationship between vocabulary and glossary, because that's the only relevant part. We also should decide what to do with the data description ontology, because the TermIt ontology, it's, I think, much simpler, because its base identifier is in English. So we just replace the terms, say this is a new version of the TermIt ontology, and we are done. For the data description ontology, because its identifier is, or the base identifier is in Czech, I can probably go to GitHub and just to illustrate. So the identifier is this ontologies, slovník, agendový, popis dat. So this would have to change. So this part is again in Czech, so we would have to change that. So the question is, it would basically be a new ontology. Yeah. So do we just replace it completely, or do we put it into the same repository and do just some sort of hierarchy migration, updating the major version from 1 to 2, and say it's still the same ontology, just have a different identity, it just has as a different identifier. So this is something that we should consider. Also, since we won't be using parts of it anymore. The question is whether we remove them from the ontology, or we leave them in and just not use them anymore. That's also something that we need to consider. And the last part, which is partially motivated by a ticket that we had from one of the users of TermIt who already did some contributed translation of the user interface to German, and he wanted to also translate the underlying ontologies to German. And he pointed out that it's actually quite difficult to find out which ontologies and where to get them, because the popis.dot ontology or the data description ontology has its own repository on GitHub. TermIt ontology is in the TermIt repository on GitHub. So this could also be an opportunity to consider relocation of these ontologies maybe into the same repository, or having each of them their own repository, stuff like that. So that's basically the proposal. We already discussed the proposal, but we didn't really go into much detail. So I wanted to take this opportunity to actually hammer out some of the details of this transformation, find out whether it's actually doable or not, because if it required manual approach from the user, that would be much more difficult, and we would have to consider that as well. But because it looks like it could be probably automated, I so far I have 9 Sparkle queries that do the transformation. But that's just a change of this of the data structure. It doesn't obviously do the identifier migration from Czech to English. That would be a separate part. But for the simplification of the schema, it's 9 Sparkle queries, and maybe you could actually optimize that and get it to a lower number. But it's not so important because we can automate its execution. So I just wanted to try it and see if it actually would work. Obviously, it would also require major refactoring of the source code of TermIt, but I think even the API would probably remain more or less the same. The data that would come from the API would be slightly different, so we would probably do a major version, but that's to be expected, and I don't think it would disrupt the clients very much, probably or most likely not at all. So yeah, that's it. Would love to hear your feedback for this proposal, maybe ideas for the questions that I said are still on the table, or maybe discuss the timeline for this, because I think it makes a lot of sense to try to do this, especially if we want to sort of push TermIt into outside of just the Czech Republic and the public offices in the Czech Republic which are currently using it. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, so I can maybe ask some questions.
Please,
okay.
Go ahead.
Which one first? Okay, so just when you migrate the schema, is it necessary, or is it like, have you considered and why you chose to do it like migrating everywhere, like using queries? Why not just have the schema migrated once and then just replace it everywhere else? Just like I believe GraphDB, TermIt, ontologies are stored in context. Just replace the context. Not that it matters. Yeah. I guess the it's gonna be the same thing, but it's just less queries, maybe less things to go wrong.
Yeah, that's a good point, which I actually forgot to consider, that we need to also update the ontologies, which are, as you said, we try to keep them in separate contexts. So yeah, that's actually something I forgot to put into this presentation and forgot to consider it.
Oh, really? I thought
Yeah.
I heard something about it. That you said schema
Yeah, I
transforms.
did say schema, but it was not in this sense of, yeah, we need to replace the whole ontology in the repository. I didn't realize that we actually need to do that as well.
Yeah,
So yeah, that makes sense, but we will definitely have to do it, but it's not enough because that's just the schema, and we need to update the data.
yeah, definitely. The data needs to, because you don't know, what data they
Yeah.
have, so you can't just give them the data they have.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we actually so it will be a little bit more difficult because yeah, the Sparkle queries are mostly updating the data,
Yeah.
or pretty much all of them update just the data. But we also need to update the schema, which means basically replacing the contexts with the ontologies. Yeah, that's something I forgot to consider for this.
Or maybe you meant the schema that you need to change the structure, how the data
Yeah.
is stored.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah.
because you replace like the glossary with SKOS, just SKOS and
That's
stuff.
that's what I meant.
Yeah. Sorry, that I confused.
No, it's actually a very good point because I completely forgot that we also need to do this change as well.
Okay. Then I guess I have a question regarding ontographer. So how, or maybe not just ontographer, but in general about the iris of the concepts and maybe relating to ontographer. So if we change this, so does the concepts in the SKOS glossary or vocabulary will have some sort of SKOS prefix or something like that?
No.
Or they could be just plain like namespace and whatever, just the
yeah, no, the data will not change in this regard. Like the identifiers of the terms, those are based on the identifiers of the vocabularies, and they are based on some configuration. So these will not change at all.
So
this does not affect the terms and the vocabularies at all. It just it removes the glossary, but the identifiers of the vocabulary and the terms remain the same.
Oh, so I thought that you change also, like if there is a check
No,
of the terms, you change them.
Okay. No, definitely not. It's just about the ontology. Not
okay, I see.
The actual data.
Okay. Then I guess regarding this topic, is it an ontographer and maybe like importing and stuff? So if you want to import an ontology, I don't remember, we don't support in TermIt, just ontology, plain ontology importing. We need to convert it to SKOS, right?
Yeah, it has to be.
So if you import into something like that and you just give some iris for the concepts, it won't change the iris when it gets imported.
Yeah, it's this is a separate issue, and we have. You mean the ticket that we already have for the problem that it adds this poem separator?
Yeah, maybe we already discussed it many times. So
yeah, we did, and actually I ran into it this week because I was working on some transformation of an ontology into SKOS, into TermIt for the Czech standardization agency. And I ran into this exact problem. So I decided to prioritize it and start working on it. So my idea is that it will, if the ontology or the SKOS glossary has a preferred namespace, then it will use this preferred namespace for the terms, and will not put any separator or anything like that. So that's good. So if you are importing SKOS glossary that has a preferred namespace, which is compatible with the terms, then nothing will change, and the identifiers of the terms will remain the same. It will use this configured separator, like the /poem, which we have for the check deployments. It will use it only in case there is no preferred namespace configured, or, and this maybe not even necessarily this part, or when you are creating a new vocabulary and you don't specify a preferred namespace for it. So then it will basically set, which is something which TermIt already does. It sets the preferred namespace to the identifier of the vocabulary /poem, or the plus the separator, basically. Yeah. But yeah, the idea is that if you are importing a glossary or a vocabulary which has a preferred namespace, then this preferred namespace will be used, and TermIt will not attempt to change any identifiers.
So in this case, preferred namespace is something that you provide with the SKOS.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay. So it's a property SKOS. Okay. Is it the?
It's not a SKOS property. It's some one something. I don't know what the exact namespace is, but it's.
But it's not TermIt specific.
No. It's
okay.
It's a known. Oh, maybe actually we use it here. Yeah, it's this plural vocab one. Preferred namespace, URI, and preferred namespace prefix. So this is basically what we will be interested in. So if it's there, it will be used for the terms.
Okay. And so this just to finish this part, this topic with I somehow am interested how this relates to ontographer. Does that change anything regarding the? It's gonna just use the same concepts in ontographer no matter what it is, and that's not gonna. Okay.
Yeah, hopefully it will not change anything from the user's perspective. There will have to be some changes in the code, because the queries, I noticed, they also rely on this vocabulary has a glossary structure. So there will have to be some changes inside ontographer, but from the user's perspective, it should be the same.
I see. Okay, and regarding, I guess, last thing, you said about someone wanting to translate the ontologies to German and he couldn't find them.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if it makes sense to put everything in the TermIt repository.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, I mean, the options I was considering was create a separate repository for the ontologies, or have each ontology in its own repository. Those are the options I was considering. Like basically removing the TermIt ontology from the TermIt repository and putting it somewhere else.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Even the TermIt one. Yeah,
yeah, because the data description ontology already has its own repository. So we would either add TermIt to it, or create a new repository for TermIt. I was also thinking about whether we should not merge these two ontologies, but I don't think it's a good idea. The purpose of the ontologies was always slightly different. The data description ontology is more general, and it's not specific to TermIt. So that's why we originally created it separately in a separate repository. So I don't want to break this. So we would probably just move TermIt ontology into a new repository.
Yeah,
and that should actually be also more compatible with the ontology publication server that Lukáš is working on.
Okay, I see.
Because then it would just, you would just connect it to the repository, and it would take care of the publication process.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm really excited about. Like if we just, you just say, okay, this is the GitHub repository to load the ontology from, and then you just let it work, and it will keep it updated, and
Yeah, that sounds really nice.
display the nice UI and all this stuff. That would really, I think that would really take off a burden off our backs.
So it will commit there and stop.
Yeah, that's my idea. Like that, it would have webhooks and for the repositories, and once the repository is updated, like you push new changes into the main branch, it would automatically republish the ontology.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea. So hopefully, no more dealing with Apache rules and all this nonsense.
Yeah.
But that's a different topic.
Yeah. I guess that's it for me. I don't have any other question.